I have seen your dad on air fumble his words and seemingly forget what he's talking about. I think there are a lot of people that have spent way too many years in politics. I think Mitch McConnell is one of those people.
Joe Biden got 81 million votes. He got more votes than anyone that has ever run for president of the United States every time he went up the steps of Air Force One, and if he used the short steps instead of the long steps.
What do you think some of those failures were?
I think one of the failures was the way in which they executed the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
I cannot stand the way the Afghan withdrawal happened. I don't even want to talk about it because it's going to get me into a really dark place. Hunter, I want to be able to speak without offending you, and so I'm going to be blunt. But, I have seen your dad on air fumble his words and seemingly forget what he's talking about. But I don't think that is, I'm not attacking your dad. I'm not.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people that have spent way too many years in politics.
Yeah.
I think Mitch McConnell is one of those people. Yeah. I mean, when you watch Mitch over the past year or two, there's been several examples where he totally blanks out. Completely.
That's a very different thing, Shawn. And
blanks out.
By the way, yeah, no,
and
I think
there are a lot of people in government right now, president included,
yeah,
who are too fucking old to be there.
But so you come from it, and the reason that I'm sitting here is I've heard you say that, and you don't come from it with a cruelty, or a bullshit, or having to make things up, or to say you personally know. Like I've seen some of you guys sit here and say, like, "Oh yeah, everybody knew that he had X, Y, or Z," and it makes you so angry as a son. But I've never heard you say that before, and I can say to you is that I totally, completely can appreciate the position that you have about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can go through a series of rationales for why my dad decided to run for a second term. Okay? Number one, he's the only guy that was able to beat Donald Trump. And this is what people, I think, that I sit and I listen to these, these Democratic pundits that have made millions of dollars off of just breathing hot air into a microphone and living off of the fact that they carried Barack Obama's bag. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or taking credit for, running his campaign like David Axelrod does. Nobody made Barack Obama except Barack Obama. But they sit around and they act as if they know things that other people don't, and they make he should have just he shouldn't have run for a second term. When they know better about the reality of the politics of the presidency, which is that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. He got more votes than anyone that has ever run for president of the United States by 7 million votes, more than anyone that's ever run. He had a higher voter participation rate than any time since 1900. Okay? And he came into the presidency, and in a 2-year period of time, he passed more bipartisan legislation than any president since Lyndon Johnson, since 60 years ago. Okay? He passed the PACT Act and the Chips and Science Act, and just go down the list. He passed the Infrastructure Act, and then he passed the IRA. He passed more legislation on a bipartisan basis, by the way, than anybody. He would have passed immigration reform if Trump hadn't kiboshed it at the end. And so he goes into the midterms, and he has the most successful midterms of any president since FDR. He limits the losses in the House of Representatives to single digits. He gains a seat in the United States Senate, which hasn't happened since 1932, and he picked up more governorships in state houses than any president since FDR, since 1932 also, who worked with supermajorities. So after that, what's the decision that you make as a president of the United States? Because if you say that you're not going to run at that time, what ends up happening is you become a lame duck. You use all the power of influence that you have. And so, based upon that success, and based upon the feeling that while he was losing a physical step, while his speech slowed, that he still had the capacity to be able to make the most important decisions that had led to the successes that he's had up until that point, he decided that he was going to run again. And then he ran. And then what happened is every little thing, every time he went up the steps of Air Force One, and if he used the short steps instead of the long steps, and if he stumbled when he was walking to the podium, and if he tripped over a word of a president that he was talking about he's talking about India and not Iraq, and every single thing became a New York Times level 2-page expose. The New York Times wrote over 120 separate pieces on Joe Biden's age in a 11-month period of time. Fox News didn't stop talking about it. And so here you are, you can't run away from the impression, and then comes the debate. And that was a complete and utter disaster. And he recovered in the debate. If you go back and watch the debate, he recovered in the debate and was able to, get through the debate, but it reinforced every preconceived notion that people had, whether you loved him or hated him. So then he's got to make a decision about whether or not he's going to stay in the race. And the primary's over. He'd overwhelmingly won. He'd gotten a challenge from Dean Phillips. Anyone could have run against him. Anybody in the party could have run against him. And no one did.
Why didn't they?
Because he had the most successful presidency of any Democrat or any president in his 2 years, in the 3 years that he was there, regardless of whether you think so or not, in terms of whether the affordability or whether he'd gotten inflation down enough for anybody, but just in terms of the brass tacks. I mean, look at what he did as it relates to NATO. He was able to negotiate you may disagree with us strengthening NATO, but he was able to bring Sweden and Finland into NATO, the first separate new members of NATO since the pact was created in 1948. I mean, whatever your position on the things that he did them exceedingly well and accomplished them. And he had mistakes like every other president has had. Some that I may disagree with, but absolutely 100% had some real failures also.
What do you think some of those failures were?
I think one of the failures was the way in which they executed the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think it was an obvious fucking failure. I think 13 Marines are dead. I think that there was a better way to do it. And I think that, I can blame it on his generals. I can blame it on the people, the way in which we did it. But my dad always knew this also, is that the buck stops with him. I think that was a failure. I don't think leaving Afghanistan was the right thing to do. I think that in terms of the 20 years of blood that your brothers gave for an endless war in $8 trillion, is that there is a never-ending lust to continue to sell material and our blood, sweat, and money to a country that has never been anything but a killing ground for empires. Mm-hmm. So, regardless of whether you believe that or not, the execution of the withdrawal resulted, I think, in, and by the way, you can blame part of it on Trump and that he let all those people out of the prison and Taliban, but you know what? But it stops with the president, and that's what he said. That was a mistake.
Well, how does he feel about that now? Same
way that I do. Is that those lives literally are, I don't think that there's anything that is more, and I don't want to speak for my dad, mm-hmm. but I know my dad, is crushed by that. Crushed by it. Just absolutely crushed. And I don't expect. When did we lose the idea that would be a surprise to anybody? Like, for instance, I disagree with George Bush on a lot of shit when he was president. But I never, ever, ever questioned whether or not he was a patriot. You know, or by the way, I guess patriot. What does that even mean? Is that if he could, he would do anything that he could to protect people that we send to serve in harm's way for our freedom. I just believe that, and doesn't make it any easier for the people that have lost people, for the families that have lost people, for the brothers or sisters or dad. You know, I mean, shit. I don't know for certain that my brother's brain cancer was the direct result of the burn pits that he lived by for a year in Iraq when he was there. But I bet you had something to do with it.
Well, I'll bet it had something to do with
That's
it.
not like being shot, and I'm positive it had something to do with it. But I mean, like, I don't want to, like, the point being is, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of things that you can't imagine, the kinds of decisions that you have to make as a president, and that if you have a heart and you care, is just must be so overwhelmingly beyond comprehension difficult.
I cannot fucking stand the way the Afghan withdrawal happened.
Yeah.
It I don't even want to talk about it because it's going to get me into a really dark place.
Yeah.
But I will say that, when you have to make a decision on when you have to make a decision, and whatever decision you're going to make, people are going to die.
Yeah.
Because of the decision that you made.
Yeah.
That would be a really fucking tough call.
Yeah.
So I will give him that.
Yeah.
But the way that went down is
I don't disagree with you, Shawn.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.